we're going to be talking about a decision that plagues most people in their late 30s and in their 40s, that should you upgrade to a bigger house.
He was having an EMI on his current house, which was completed just few months ago. So the burden of having another EMI was not a good idea for him.
Did you have your own room growing up?
Neil, so Manipur is a different place. We have 8 BHK, so 8 bedrooms, so we have ample space.
Okay.
But it's not like a metropolitan city.
That's a very millennial thought process, which prioritizes experiences over possessions. And not going for a house and freeing up that money just gives you that optionality that you want to instead spend it on the car, or you want to spend it on a foreign trip.
So Neil, do you know what Shah Rukh Khan said to Rajkumar Rao when he was about to buy a house? Do you know Warren Buffett has a kind of opposite philosophy?
And one other thing that people in the old days used to factor a lot is the tax saving in a second home loan. The answer to the whole rent versus buy question is that if you're buying to live, that's okay. Try to not buy to invest, because there are a bunch of issues with real estate. Hello and welcome to Moneynomics with Mint. I am Neil Borate, personal finance editor at Mint, and today we're going to be talking about a decision that plagues most people in their late 30s and in their 40s, that should you upgrade to a bigger house. By this time in most people's careers, they've already bought their first house and they are somewhere in the middle of paying their EMIs. So joining me today to decode all of this is my colleague Sashind. And he's going to introduce some of the Mint's case studies that we've spoken to people about whether they upgraded, why they did or did not choose to upgrade. But before we get into those case studies, just want to first talk about some factors that might affect this decision. Probably the biggest factor here is family, that people, when they have kids, they need a bigger space. And at some point in your life, you will also probably have your parents move back in with you. They need the support. So again, that creates another need for a bigger house. And more than both these things put together is probably then the peer pressure element, that you got to keep up with folks in your circle boasting about the latest 3 BHK in a high rise that they bought. And some people start even buying their retirement homes. So they start buying land that they want to eventually build a house on and retire on. So Sashind, let's talk about the first of the 3 families that you spoke to. What was their story?
So Neil, we will name 3 people and we'll speak about them. So the first guy is someone called Manish. So Manish was staying in a 2 BH apartment and he was in his 40s. So Neil, as you correctly mentioned, 40s is the time when your salary increases, where your daughter or son gets to a certain age where they need more privacy and stuff. So Manish was going through the same time, and when a new apartment building was coming up in the neighborhood, all of their friends who were staying in the same apartment created a WhatsApp group where 12 of them were planning, to book a new apartment. So he was staying in a 2 BHK apartment, and all of them were planning to buy a 3 BHK apartment.
And Manish lives in Bangalore, right?
Yes, Manish lives in Bangalore.
What area do you recall?
I don't remember the specific area, but he said it's in the urban good locality area.
And the new house that he was planning to upgrade to, was that in
it was 4 or 5 kilometers away from where he was residing, so not very far.
So Manish decided, despite the WhatsApp group and his friends all being in it, he decided to not upgrade. Yeah. And most of the people in that group actually did upgrade.
To be precise, 10 of them upgraded.
Out of
12.
Yeah, so vast majority. So why did he choose not to upgrade?
So yes, there is a little bit of personal element to this. He was having an EMI on his current house, which was completed just few months ago. So the burden of having another EMI was not a good idea for him.
Yeah.
He very nicely told what's the point of having a bigger house if you can't be mentally peaceful, right?
Yeah.
The other important thing, Neil, was that his daughter is currently some 12 or 13 years old. And whenever she, reaches class 12 or starts college, she might be needing a lot of money for her education. And he was consciously planning for that. what some of her friends in the WhatsApp group suggested him was that, you can always book this house, and you can, when the construction is done, you can decide whether to sell the house or not to sell the house. But in this process, he thought what will happen is he will end up blocking a chunk of his amount, and he can't sell a part of his 3 BHK, right?
Yes.
Whenever he needs to liquidate.
Yes, you can't liquidate 1/10 of a 3 BHK.
Yes.
Correct.
So that's why he and his wife ended up with the decision to delay this further, and for the time being invest aggressively into mutual funds. Whenever the mutual fund grows, they might be in a comfortable position to buy.
Yeah. So apart from the two factors that they identified, one is that they don't want to endlessly have EMIs on their shoulders. And of course, the lumpiness of real estate, that you commit yourself and then you need some money you can't take out, like bits and pieces out of it. Another factor that should have affected decision here is under construction, because there is a risk the builder may not complete the property. This happens, such a common story up and down our country. So I would say they probably did the smart thing, the conservative and yet smart thing. What was the next case study?
So the next case study is also a guy from Bangalore. Their family was living in Bangalore, and they were living in a Jain-dominated community. So Neil, if you know Jains,
A Jain. Okay.
A Jain, yeah. So if you know Neil, Jain are very conscious about their food habits, right? So you know how difficult it is to find a pure vegetarian restaurant nowadays, right? So, but that locality was such that they were having a very homely feeling, and they never wanted to move out of that place, because they were getting Jain temples, Jain restaurants, everything was there. So they didn't want to move to a different locality, and they thought they will be happy in their house forever. And they were staying in a 2 BHK. They have two sons, 10-year and one 8-year-old. But when a new 3 BHK apartment started coming up in the locality itself, they had to rethink whether we should move to a different house. And the logic was that their sons were 8 and 10 years old currently, but very soon they would be needing their own rooms. And whenever a guest comes, a 3 BHK would be the ideal situation, right?
Yeah, but no, I was just thinking of my own childhood. So I didn't have my own room until I was probably 10, and then I had my own room because my sister went to hostel. So obviously it was a different time, but anyway, carry on. Did you have your own room growing up?
Neil, so Manipur is a different place. We have 8 BHK, so 8 bedrooms, sorry, so we have ample space. Okay. But it's not like a metropolitan city. Metropolitan cities are different. Yeah. So Neil, coming back to this guy whose name is Yashashvi, he and his wife had a serious thought on whether they should shift to a bigger house. Now for them, the challenge was that an EMI was already running in their name. It was about to be completed, but again it was about having peace of mind. And the same thing, right? They don't know after 5-6 years whether their son would be in a hostel. Just imagine if their son stays in a hostel, then there's no point of taking a bigger house, because they would be anyway spending very less time in their house, right?
Quite similar to the first
quite
family
similar
where
to
they had an EMI.
Yes. Also, another point to note, slightly different in his case, was he already had an EMI running. So the burden of having another EMI, it was a no-no for him. Interestingly, what he told me was, instead, if he had shifted to a bigger house, he would have to compromise on other things, like going to fancy foreign travels, giving donation. He is big on donation, but even buying a new, bigger and a better car. So he said, I will delay this for the time being, wait for 5-6 years. Until then, he will enjoy life as it comes, foreign trips. He recently went to Barcelona, so that's something.
Yeah, so that's a very millennial, so I don't know if this guy was a millennial, but that's a very millennial thought process, which prioritizes experiences over possessions. And not going for a house and freeing up that money just gives you that optionality that you want to instead spend it on the car, or you want to spend it on a foreign trip or whatever else it is. And one other thing that people in the old days used to factor a lot is the tax saving in a second home loan. So if you took a home loan and you began paying your EMI, so the principal got a separate tax deduction and the interest got a separate tax deduction. And if you rented out that house, the interest deduction was not even capped. So people were able to show like net loss on their house property adjusted against their other income, and basically really milk that
Tax
loophole for their own benefit. And the government has progressively closed that. So if I remember correctly, in case of housing property now, you cannot have a more than 2 lakh loss, like the max that's capped. So even if your interest exceeds the rent, you can't have like 20 lakh of interest loss that you set off against your other income. So the tax rules have been tightened, and a lot of people have anyway moved to the new regime where these deductions are not there anyway. So it becomes redundant to focus on that. All right, Sashin, let's talk about the third case study now.
So Neil, the third case study is interesting in the sense they were already staying in a 3 BHK house, and it's not about moving to a bigger house. It's about moving to a better 3 BHK house. Better in the sense they are currently staying in a government apartment which was allocated to them when his dad was working as a government officer. But what happens in those kind of areas is there are not stuff like swimming pools, gym. There's no proper clubhouse and all. But they thought this was very essential for their daughter, who is currently 8 years old. She not 8 years old. I think she's not even 8, 6 or 5. I forgot the exact.
That's okay. Toddler, huh?
Toddler, yeah. So you know how important it is for them to learn swimming and to go to a proper play area and all. So they wanted to shift to a bigger house, a better house. The problem is that when they went out looking for a place to buy during the COVID, when they thought the prices would be depressed, it wasn't. It was 3 BHK in Gurgaon, in the locality, was selling for 2.5 crore. Sadly, they are working in a corporate companies, both the husband and the wife, but they didn't come out from a good MBA college or didn't have a CA background. They just had PhD and came from a research background.
Just had PhD.
Just the PhD. That's an interesting point. They started late and with a low salary base.
Okay.
So they couldn't save as much. They were telling me the story of when they approached a mutual fund distributor. The mutual fund distributor helped them with the investment once, and then didn't really nudge them to invest more. So they didn't end up investing a lot of money. So right now they couldn't buy the house, but their plan is, they will aggressively save for the next 5 years. So if they started the 5-year journey from 2021, they want to save aggressively till 2026 or 27. And by the time they have a 1 crore corpus, they might consider taking out 70-80 years down payment and then finally buying the house.
Yeah. So again, the third family here is doing the prudent thing, which is to wait. At the end of the day, you still have to do the math. Like even 5 years down the line, should you be locking up 2-3 crores of your corpus into real estate? This requires a sit-down conversation with a SEBI-registered investment advisor, ideally. But if not, just try to figure out your other goals also, your kids' education if you have kids, your own retirement if you're planning to retire at some age. And once you have enough money for those things, then because a house upgrade is an optional thing, you can live without it. With other goals, certain other goals in life, you really can't live without. So there we go. A few other factors that you should consider while making this decision. One is that there are transaction costs in housing. So you have to pay 5 to 6% stamp duty right off the bat when you sell your existing house, again when you buy the new house. Now maybe the builder or the other party will bear some of the stamp duty, but some of it does fall on you. And 3-4% of a crore or 2 crores is not a small amount of money. Again, when you have multiple properties, you have to pay maintenance in multiple properties. You have to pay property tax in multiple properties. You have to deal with repairs. It's a lot of hassle.
You might want to design the interiors.
Yeah. So again, we are not against upgrading. Of course, you should if it makes you happy. In personal finance, the answer to the whole rent versus buy question is that if you're buying to live, that's okay. Try to not buy to invest because there are a bunch of issues with real estate. And this upgradation thing is a subset of that question, that now that you bought, should you buy bigger? And I hope that these examples of these families will weigh on your mind and you will make that smart decision.
So Neil, do you know what Shah Rukh Khan said to Rajkumar Rao when he was about to buy a house?
What did he say?
He said, आप जब भी घर खरीदो तो आप औकात के थोड़ा बाहर खरीदना क्योंकि then the God will also see him buying a bigger house that his aspiration are good. Basically, for those who don't understand Hindi, Rajkumar Rao, the famous actor, when he wanted to buy a house, Shah Rukh Khan came to him, an even more famous actor, and said, whenever you buy a house, you should buy something that is beyond your standard, because then you will force yourself to work harder, and God is also seeing that you're trying, having big aspirations. So Neil, what do you think about this?
Very unique philosophy.
Do you know Warren Buffett has a kind of opposite philosophy? So Warren Buffett obviously is the richest investor currently in the world, but he's been staying in the same house since 1958. That's more than 60 years. He has all the money to upgrade to a bigger house, but strangely he finds comfort in the place where he has been staying since 1958. So two different people, two different philosophies.
I personally see myself more in Warren Buffett's camp, but obviously it's a very personal decision.
Let's see. When you're 60 or 70, I'll reach out to you again and I'll ask you if you're staying in the same house.
Yes. Thanks, Sashind. And I hope we could help you guys with your own home upgrade decision.